Listen up, get ready, I'm not gonna take no more. There's a revolution, a revelation going on in my soul. Buckle up, get ready, we're not gonna... Okay, welcome back, everybody, all you citizens of the world. It's time for our second guest today on Live from the Heartland for the week of June 15th. And he's an old comrade. We've known each other now for a good many years. We met finally when we knew about each other earlier, but when we went to Nicaragua with Athletes United for Peace, playing baseball, the one and only former world record holder, Olympian Phil Shinnick. Good afternoon to you, Phil.
Well, I'm happy to see you. And yeah, we had a great trip to Nicaragua. It was wonderful.
We'll talk a little bit about that, but the reason I wanted to get you on, besides it being coming close to the Olympics, is you have a new book out. It's called Beating the Odds, Stories of Truth and Justice, and I know Hal will put this up. And it's not just a story about you finally claiming your world record long jump when you were in Modesto, California in 1963, but it's also about the kind of dreams and stories that you woke up to for a period of 33 days. As you say in your introduction into the book, you say, this is not about that process of reclaiming the title, but what came to my mind from waiting to see if I would be successful in getting the world record I deserved, something I never got over until the plaque was in my hands. Talk a little bit about that experience, what happened, and what led you to write this book.
Well, it took 58 years to get the world record. And finally, Seb Coe became World Athletics president. And he's an old buddy. He's an old radical athlete. He was part of our whole movement, and he got to be president. And then we requested that he review my record. And of course, within 1 second, they denied it. But he put it to the Council of Arbitration Sport. And so I had to prepare, this. And fortunately, the arbitrator was a sprinter from Canada, who's an honorary judge. And so he was an athlete. So he was able to, to express myself. But in the process of getting it, it took about a year for them to come to a decision. So I woke up one morning and my whole body broke out in a rash. It looked awful. I mean, I looked like an old man. I'm 80, but I don't feel old. And I thought something is going on in me that I'm so upset. So I got a cortisone shot to calm myself down. And then I woke up one morning and I had all this stuff in my head. So I got on my computer and I typed for 2 hours. I had like 5 stories. I said, this is nice. I woke up the next morning. I had more stories. I wrote them down. 33 days in a row. Then I woke up the 34th day, nothing. And so I just put it down, put it in my shelf. I published a lot of books. I'm a scientist. I publish articles all the time. And then I had some cancer, and I had these incisions in my arm, and my arm hurt like hell for a year. And then I thought, pain isn't body, it's in the mind. So what's bothering you, Phil? And I said to myself, I want that book to go out. So I called Amazon. I said, I want to publish a book. Within 5 minutes, a company calls me and said, you got a manuscript? And I said, yeah. I sent it to them. They sent it back within 4 hours. And I edited it, and the whole thing was published in 10 days. And my arm stopped hurting. So
I got to take some lessons from that, because I'm, Katie Hogan, who's sometimes on this show, we were partners in the Heartland Cafe together, and we are long ways into writing a book, but it's been a couple of years. you did it in a short period of time. That's you're something else. You're an Olympian.
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing is I don't think I wrote the book so much as I'm more of a transcriber to my mind. My mind did the whole thing during the sleep. And then I'd wake up and it was in my head. So I just sat down and I scrolled, in my memory, and my fingers went as fast as I could. So that's why I published the book. So I would feel better.
Tell our listeners and viewers a little bit about the record that you set, what the controversy was, and why for 50 some odd years or more you really were fighting. I know you used to talk about it all the time, and then all of a sudden, boom, the record finally was yours, as it was you deserved.
Well, I think that all my friends were tired of hearing about it because
we were.
Yeah. Well, in 1963, you didn't compete as a freshman. So my sophomore year, that means that I really hadn't had a track meet in almost 2 years. And so the first track meet was against Mel Renfro, the great, he was second in the NC2A in the long jump. I competed in Oregon. It was in the rain against the wind, and I jumped over 25 feet. And I don't think he got over 22 feet. The next weekend, I jumped 25.7 in a crosswind and a cold night, and everyone else was jumping 23 feet. And then I went to the conference championships, which was my big desire to win the conference, USC, UCLA. And so I went to the Berkeley Stadium, and I got up very early, like at 6 o'clock with Brian Sternberg, and I competed, and I put a little piece of paper at 26 feet, and I jumped over 26 feet, and I fouled, and then I jumped over 26 feet, and I was so excited that I had gone that far, and I'm jumping around, and then the official put up a red flag and said that I had a foul jump, and I put my spikes on the board. I said, it's not I did not foul, and he says, no, you didn't foul, but you didn't have your balance. Now, I don't know what that means. I got out of the pit properly, but he negated the jump. So my coach says, listen, no one is jumping over 23 feet. So go down the left side of the runway. We're going to put a mark, 1.5 feet behind the board, and just jump easy. So I did, and I hit the pit, and it was hard pan. No one had raked it. It was like cement. And when my heels hit, I was on my back, and I skid on my back, 21 feet, 5.5 inches, and I missed the final by 1/2 inch. I'm out of competition. So I sit and sulk the whole time. I high jumped. And then at 5 o'clock, somebody, and also I was spooked because at Gonzaga Prep, they always show the free speech movement, where the demonstrations in the stadium, and I got spooked in the stadium. It upset me. So they said, Phil, come to Modesto. Ralph Boston is there. We know what happened here. And so I did, and Brian Sternberg and I rode down to Modesto. We got there about 7 o'clock, and I hadn't eaten all day. My ankles were taped. I still had sand in my crotch from long jumping. And so I got a hamburger and a milkshake at 7 o'clock. I walked on the field at 7:10. They put me right next to Ralph Boston, the world record holder, American record holder. And I warmed up, and the first jump, I jumped easy and fouled at 26:10. And so I went to Brian Sternberg and I said, Brian, I'm going to break the world record. And can you break the world record in the pole vault? And so we shook hands. And so he tested the wind. And so the next jump, I jumped 27.5. My right foot was 27.10. It was a new world record. And so the reporters wanted me to, who's Phil Shinnick? So I went up in the stands and with my spikes on. So I took another jump, but my shoe split as I took off, so I couldn't jump anymore. And then Brian broke the world record. But at that time, they had a rule that said that there had to be a wind reading. And before that, if there was no wind, there was no wind gauge, because why would you need a wind gauge when So it ended up that because even though there was a correct wind reading for a 220 hurdle going on at the same time, they didn't record any recording for me because you have to have two wind gauge, and they only had one at the time. So when I got back to the University of Washington, they said they didn't think the world record would count. So now Ralph Boston, I beat Ralph Boston. He jumped 27.2 1/2. 5 world records were broken that night, and I was voted the outstanding athlete. But for the next 58 years, I was not recognized or honored for that world record. So, long story how to get there. But Sebco finally got to be the head of World Athletics and gave me an opportunity. And he gave me a really nice plaque. And I called him and I said, Seb, if you don't give me the world record, I'm going to have the ghost of Prefontaine haunt you.
Steve Prefontaine.
Yeah, but I actually meant it. That because you can access people who are dead if you have the right meditations.
Well, we'll save that for another interview.
Yeah.
But you went on to be an Olympian, and you were on the U.S. Olympic team a couple of times. Share with us a little bit about your experience as an Olympian, what it was like, and because the Olympics are coming up, and any thoughts on the coming up Olympics?
Well, I don't want to talk too much about it because during the time that I was on the Olympic team in 1964, they had college coaches as the coaches. And so it was a terrible situation all the way around. Plus, when I competed, I was the only athlete that had a wind at my face and at my back, and it was a rainstorm, and the runway was underwater. So
Where was that, Tokyo?
Tokyo. So I never really got a good jump. And I jumped on the 68 Olympic team. I jumped 26.10. And but there's a lot of other competitions besides the Olympic Games. I was captain of the Pan Conference Championships in Tokyo as well. But it's it's a great thing to make the Olympic team. If you make the United States Olympic team in track and field, you got a good chance for a medal. You could make the Olympic team in any country in the world. The United States is very difficult to make the team.
Well, I've been watching the NC2As on TV. They were on a lot for the last 3 days. And I know that the Olympic trials are coming up, also up there at Haywood Field, the new Haywood Field. I was there once in 93, I think, or 97 maybe. But it's real different looking now. You went on to start Athletes United for Peace. And back in my Rising Up Angry days, I remember hearing about Athletes United for Peace and some stuff you were doing there on the East Coast. And the next thing I know, Guy Benjamin, former quarterback at Stanford and was behind Montana and on the 49ers, and I just saw him in Hawaii. He invited us to go to Nicaragua on a baseball friendship tour. And you and I met in an airport, probably in Mexico City. And then we took that one plane. It was a former Greek plane. We flew to Nicaragua, and we played on a coffee cooperative, played baseball in a pasture where they cleared the bull out. We played later at a prison up in near Esteli. And it was pretty wonderful. But tell me a little bit about how you came to form Athletes United for Peace, which was the sponsor of our tour.
Well, I was very big in trying to get China in the Olympics back a long, long time ago. And also I competed in Russia. So I have a great love for the Chinese and Russian people. And so I really feel the war in Vietnam and the different warmongering around the world, that there had to be a movement for peace. So I recruited world record holders, Olympians from all nations, amateur athletes, part-time athletes to unite for peace. And we did a lot. I took delegations to Russia. We published things in the New York Times. We we've been very active, and right now Barbara Horn is in charge of Athletes United for Peace, and she's very active with Black women, and she's a delegate from from Athletes United for Peace at the UN. She chairs a lot of major conferences, so it's still very, very active. And so it's the people that I met, like you and Dave Magacy and Elena Peshtikova, people from all over the world, and we're still together, working on peace issues.
I'm actually leaving on Wednesday to go to El Paso for basketball in the barrio, which is connected to Athletes United for Peace. And I'm taking my granddaughter, Ida Rocket, again. She went last year. And with my other kids, some of my kids earlier, we used to go. It's a wonderful event. And the more athletes for peace, the better, because there are some not so hot athletes out there in terms of their politics. And one would be the kicker for the Kansas City pro football team. Well, let me ask you another question as we're moving along here. For those of you who may have just tuned in, I'm here with Phil Shinnick, a former Olympian, a world record holder in long jump, and the founder of Athletes United for Peace. And I was in looking through your book, which I just got. It raised questions for me about the training you did, because you talk about, in one segment, you talk about bales of hay, throwing bales of hay, day after day, working on a farm. And you also talk about when you went to Europe as a younger fellow and you hiked for many miles and walked. What's your training like? What was it like then? What's it like now after many injuries, et cetera? I know you had a boat accident, and there you are 80 and I'm 82. I know that it doesn't come easy anymore. What do you got?
Well, you're right. I hitchhiked through Europe for almost 3 months and walked the whole time when we weren't hitching, with a big backpack. I worked on a 100,000 acre, 20,000 acre cattle ranch where we would buck bales, and I'd put up 2,000 to 4,000 bales a day. They're 50 pounds, and I'd have to lift them up onto a trailer, then lift them onto a haystack. So I was picking up 10,000 50-pound bales of hay for all summer. So I built myself up through that. But yes, I've had some accidents. I want to talk a little bit about that. But what I realized is that I overtrained when I was young. And so a lot of my injuries were from overtraining. And people don't realize that rest is very important. We get very compulsive. So I developed a thing. There's 3 things in sports. There's endurance, there's speed, and there's power. So I have 3 days. I would run the hills, for endurance. Then I'd go to the track and I'd run world-class, very, very fast. Then I would go lift weights, but I wouldn't lift a lot of weights. I would lift heavy weights, but not many of them. And then I would take a day off. And then that routine of those 3 things, I would rotate according to my mood and to the weather and the time of the year. So my training always changed. And before it was, the same thing, the same workout. So that was big. And you're right. I was outside of Santo Domingo and down in the Caribbean, and I was on a launch boat, and the heavy sea, and I got thrown up in the air, and then the boat hit me in the back and broke my back really bad. Cracked.
Yeah, that was just a few years ago.
Yeah, that was 10 years ago. So I was in bad shape, but and then so I've had a bunch of injuries. But the thing is that if you're a great athlete and you're a serious athlete, you're going to get hurt. And I think the thing is that when people get hurt, sometimes they think that's the end of my career. But when you're hurt, to me, besides an accident, if you're hurt with sports, it means that you're out of balance. You did something wrong. So I always saw injuries in athletics as good information. to correct it. And I really work on my life. I've really worked on my injuries. And even now I work at least an hour to 2 hours a day with breathing and relaxation, rehabilitation. But a lot of people don't they see that as not training, but it really is training. So you have to respect your injuries, and you have to pay attention to them and not see it as the end of the world. I've had probably 30 major injuries, broken both feet, broken both hands, have 5 brain concussions, I've a broken back. I had advanced arthritis of the hip, which but yoga, stretching, and calming your mind are the most important things.
Well, you work as an acupuncturist, and I had the honor of having you work on me a few times. So most memorable was we were driving around in that old car of yours in New York, and lo and behold, you were doing acupuncture on me. I was in the back seat with my leg up in the front between the 2 seats, and you were working on me with needles as you were driving and at various stoplights. And it's I don't know if I ever took a picture of that or not, but it was pretty much that I've always remembered that, and I'm looking forward to coming back and discussing my own training and my own issues now that I'm in my 80s. Talk a little bit about acupuncture. We got about 2 minutes left, I think, here.
The World Health Organization said that the number 1 treatment in the world right now is acupuncture. More people do acupuncture than any other thing. I do medical acupuncture. I was trained as a traditional doctor, but for athletes, I treat all diseases. There's nothing that you cannot treat with acupuncture. So, and I have a license in Chinese medicine. So it's a wonderful thing, particularly for athletes. There's a lot of resistance in the medical profession, but it's really, really quite wonderful. And I do acupuncture myself all the time.
Aha.
All the time. So, you think it's kind of weird needling yourself, but it's been around for thousands of years. Honest to God, it's really quite remarkable. So I've seen 50,000 people in acupuncture in the last 30 years. I never get tired of it. There's always something and people are very, I've had this morning already, I've had two neck injuries that I've fixed, and they walk away. They dance when they go away. It's very nice to do.
Well, I'm going to come to New York soon. I'll look for you sticking some needles in me. Let me ask you, lastly, as I recall, your son went off to college and he was playing rugby. Is he still playing rugby?
Well, he played. He runs distance. He runs distance, and he's a producer of films and an editor, and he's a musician. He plays in bands. I think your kids played in bands, don't they?
Oh yeah, both of my kids, and one of them has a new record out called Lake J. It's not the same as Twin Peaks was, but it's not as loud and raucous and driving, but it's good.
Yeah.
And I love our kids. The kids are, as we get older, you think a lot about your kids, and you admire your kids, and you see things that you want to comment on, but you're smart enough not to.
Yeah, well, they are better at tech. So when I go to the airport, he has his cell phone and he points it to this, and he sort of takes care of me, and I feel a little bit like a little boy. But because you're good with the tech, the Zoom and stuff like that, but it can be daunting for us.
Yeah. Well, Phil, I want to thank you for coming on live from the Heartland. I enjoy your new book, and I'll be in touch with you real soon.
Okay.